We have 100 people, as I said, on this call tonight, which is really extraordinary for our first virtual exhibition hosted by Chart. This exhibition is called We Begin Again. I'm so glad you can all be here with us tonight. Thank you for joining us. I just wanted to give a little bit of a background on Chart. Chart is a local art organization here in Chevy Chase, Maryland. Artists in Maryland and DC are members. We started in 2018. Artist Beth Cartlin brought in Marilee Harrigan and Kanika Sinkar to her studio and said, it's time for us to get the artists in the neighborhood together and start sharing work and creating programming for the community. And that is exactly what she did. We have a robust group of 120 plus members and still growing. If you live in Chevy Chase, Maryland or DC and you want to join our group, you are welcome to. There's everything from art shows in person and now virtual. We have a pop-up coming in the spring at PNC Bank in the parking lot. There will be 18 artists from our group there. There are workshops and demonstrations, which are now switching to virtual. I know Pam Gregory hosted one the other night. There are critique groups, and there's an art walk that they do every spring where you can visit artist studios and see their work and purchase their work. And there's just an assortment of hobbyists, emerging artists, and well-known established artists in this group. And it sort of organically happens that there's mentoring and just an exchange of ideas in this community, which is exactly the vision Beth Cartlin had when she started it, just trying to establish a vibrant group of artists and to share it with our community. This is a recorded exhibition. It'll be posted on our website. You should have received a list of the artists who are participating in the show. We have over 35. If you're interested in purchasing their work or seeing more of it, please reach out to the artist directly. And if you have any questions during the exhibit, you can just put it in the chat. Emily Thornton is monitoring and hosting our exhibit tonight, and she will announce the questions and allow the artists to answer. Just to give you a little background on the concept of art online. This might be something that's new to you, but in fact, it's been going on for many years. People have been looking and purchasing art online. It's something that has been going on for a while, and with COVID has continued seamlessly. People are actually spending more time at home because of social distancing and other restrictions, and therefore really considering how they're living in their space in a more thoughtful way, trying to purchase pieces that bring them feelings of joy and hope. So just to give you a little background on the online art market. We are lucky to have Allison Marvin here with us as our juror. She is a longtime resident of Chevy Chase and owner of an art consulting business called Sightline. Allison works with clients locally in the DC area as well as New York and California. Her clients are often either well-established collectors or just beginning to collect art for their homes. She attends high-end shows such as Art Basel in Florida and Armory and Frieze in New York, doing research for her clients. Having Allison here tonight really sticks in line with the values of our community here in Chevy Chase and also in our organization, just really bringing the art community together and celebrating all the talent that exists here. So thank you, Allison, for being here. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Allison.
Well, thank you, Emily, for the kind introduction. I am honored to have been invited to jury this exhibition, We Begin Again, and to be with all of you here tonight. Art has always been very important to me. I grew up with it. My parents are avid collectors of contemporary art. As a child, I identified as an artist and wanted to be one. And as I got older, I shifted from making art to studying art history. In my early professional years, I practiced intellectual property and art law, representing artists, galleries, museums, collectors, and others in the art community. And then for the past 16 years or so, I've been art consulting, which in a nutshell means that I help people find artwork. Most of my clients are residential, so I'm helping people find artwork for homes, and I enjoy it greatly. As Emily noted, I own an art consulting firm called Sightline, and it's based in Chevy Chase. A large part of my job is staying educated about what's going on in the art world so that I can present great art options to my clients. In a usual year, I would attend gallery and museum shows, and I would travel out of state to visit the main fairs, as Emily noted, such as Armory and Frieze in New York or Art Basel in Miami. Sometimes I even got lucky and got out to LA or London. But of course, this past year has not been usual. So I have not been looking at as much art, and I certainly haven't been traveling to see art. So jurying this exhibition has been a gift to me. I really enjoyed immersing myself in the entries and reading the descriptions that were provided by the artists, because it gave me a little bit of a snapshot of the artists behind the work. And as a whole, I would say this exhibition speaks to the power of the creative spirit to confront adversity, not necessarily to overcome it, because we can't always do that. And I think that's a truth worth speaking, but also to find some mode of healthiness in a time of sickness and a bit of joy in a time of sadness. Every new year, we're faced with the opportunity to hit reset and to work on things about ourselves that we may not like and to grow in new directions. And this year in particular, it's important that we tap into our resolve, and art helps us do that. I'm reminded of a quote by Catherine Peterson, who is the author of Bridge to Terabithia. She says, all of us use art and literature as an escape from time to time, but if it's any good, it has a healing quality, a quality that enlarges our human spirits. And I think there's a lot of artwork in this exhibition that does just that. So as a juror, I was asked to select one favorite work by each artist who submitted entries, which I did. And we will enjoy a slideshow of all of the favorited works as a part of this reception. I was also asked to select 5 top artists from the group and to feature one of his or her artworks. And let me tell you, it was not easy to limit that to just 5 artists. We Begin Again includes many wonderful creatives working in various media. And again, I was honored to be able to consider all of the works in the show. So I'm going to speak briefly about the 5 featured artists as we share an image of each artwork. And I'm going to touch on 2 main points with respect to each piece. The first is how the work embodies the theme of the exhibition, We Begin Again. And the second is its aesthetic strengths. So the artworks are going to be presented based on the artist's last names in alphabetical order. And Emily, if you could pull up the first piece, that would be great. So here we have an artwork by Patricia Dubroff called Adele Dances in Full Sunlight, created in 2019. With respect to the We Begin Again theme, I think Patricia's description says it all. Adele, with arms spread, embraces the sun and dances. In a time of struggle, dancing is a courageous act. There is such strength here. There's a determination to celebrate and be joyous. This painting made me smile immediately, and it made me feel hopeful, reminding me that we will all have occasion to celebrate and dance again. In terms of aesthetics, I love the primary colors and also the close crop that Patricia gives to her figure, Adele. It really pulls the figure right into the presence of the viewer. The abstract background also caught my eye with the bands of color, which remind me of the bands of color that the minimalist Ellsworth Kelly would use in his artwork, although here they take on a more organic form. I also enjoy the patterning in the forefront that Patricia uses for Adele's hat and dress. And I feel like all of this together packs a punch and really lets us feel Adele's positive energy. The next artist, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, is Ronnie Jolas. Is that right? I hope I've got that right.
It's Jollis.
Jolas, thank you. And her work is entitled Country Doorway, created in 2017. As for the theme, We Begin Again, this piece presents us with the door as symbol. Closed, it represents blockage and restriction, but open, it stands for freedom and opportunity. With the pandemic, the doors to our homes have taken on a protective quality, keeping us apart and safe. And as Ronnie says, disconnected out of necessity. But the scene here invites us to approach and open the door, to get beyond the tall wall, to go somewhere new, to explore, and to reconnect with others. These are things most of us are craving right now. In terms of aesthetics, I think it's a lovely composition. I like the symmetry of the tree on the left-hand side and the ivy coming down on the right-hand side of the door. But I think the composition is made stronger by Ronnie's choice to put the door off center. I also enjoy the use of the various papers, including papyrus, to build up the texture. It's not overkill. It's a very soft and subtle effect. I do wish I could see the work in person, but I really do enjoy what I see online. I also appreciate the scene details such as the flower pots and the cutout in the wall. And I do find myself wondering what materials she used for the wood door. It just looks like real wood. So I'd be interested to hear that maybe in the Q&A. Next, we have Mark Leatherman and his photograph entitled After the Storm, created in 2019. In relation to We Begin Again, this photograph represents the promise of a new day. The storm has passed and the sun returns in full glory. I myself want to enter the photograph and create a personal path through this natural scenery. Mark uses his camera to provide an expansive view. He gives us the gift of seemingly limitless space, but he also anchors us with the large rocks in the foreground. We are free, but we still feel grounded. As for aesthetics, it's a beautiful composition, clearly, and it's well balanced. And again, the expansiveness is very impactful. Mark captures the subtle color variations in the ground, mountain, and sky. And also, I really love the brilliance of the sunlight that's in the photograph, but without the glare. And I'm sure that's quite difficult to do and takes a lot of technological knowledge and skill. But I really appreciate that he was able to capture that without that glaring effect. Next, we have Kirsty Little and her work Verdance, created in 2021. For We Begin Again, the first word that comes to mind when I see this piece is fierce. The physicality of it is immediate. There are two redundant shapes rising upward as a pair, perhaps green plants reaching for the sun, or women walking alongside each other, heads up, shoulders back. Verdance is reassuring in its pattern and strength, twin tiered pinnacles emerging out of a seemingly chaotic base. The message I get from this piece, and also with the help of Kirsty's description, is that women are capable of surviving just about anything, including a pandemic with children, and using whatever resources they have available to them. As for aesthetics with this piece, the materials are so intriguing to me. She's using wire, wax, and ribbon. These are materials that traditionally belong to separate male-female camps, with wire being considered more masculine, ribbon, of course, more feminine, and wax perhaps in a shared gender space. But Kirsty's manipulating these disparate materials and using a domestic skill of weaving to do so. And weaving, of course, is a skill historically reserved for women. And she's forming a feminist statement out of that process about the ability of women to re-strengthen themselves and each other. The shapes are fascinating as well. I love how the wire lines or the roots at the bottom cast lively shadows on the wall. Those shadows become a part of the piece, in my opinion, and they would change with every new context and light in which this work appears. And finally, we have Emily Strelson. This is her piece entitled All In, created in 2017. As for the We Begin Again theme, the circular lines here remind me of the circle of life: birth, maturation, death, and then rebirth, like a forest always regenerating. And the repetitive shapes are reflective of the collective we, that we're in this together, this pandemic, this moment in time, and we're swirling a bit. We may have lost our balance a bit, but we're managing and creating new patterns and life pathways, and perhaps even thriving and exploring in ways that we may not have been able to imagine 1 year ago. And as for aesthetics with this piece, I love abstract patterning generally, and I find Emily's patterning here to be quite captivating. The colors are fabulous. They're riotous, but they're not overwhelming or off-putting. She's done this beautiful job combining the primary color blue along with the 3 secondary colors, the orange, green, and violet. And I think that works quite well. Also, the composition is enlivened. There's a lot of movement, but it's also grounding with the concentration of the circular forms along the bottom horizon of the painting. And that would conclude the 5 featured artists from the show. And I just want to say congratulations to those artists. And I would be happy to answer any questions that come up during our Q&A session. So thank you.
Thank you, Allison. We're now just going to do the exhibition and take time to look at each piece. If you have any questions, you can post them in the chat. So that concludes our show. I hope everyone enjoyed seeing all the work from the artists in the exhibit. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and post them in the chat, either for the other artists or for Allison about her selection process. I'm hearing from people that it was rather a fast show and they wanted to see the work again. So we're gonna go ahead and reshare the exhibit. In the meantime, this last piece is about our upcoming pop-up, which will be in April 18th, 11 to 4 at PNC Bank parking lot.
And just so everyone knows, later this week, I will be putting all of the slides and the art show that was recorded onto Chart's website. So keep an eye out for that. And I'll also send out an email so everyone will have access to it as well. Hey, Allison, I see that there's a question for you. Jen is wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you select artworks, either for a show like this or as a client.
Okay, there I go. I'm unmuted now. Well, for this show, I just spent a good bit of time with the entry artworks and looked at them a couple of times and then gave myself a day or so to think about them and then return to them. And I felt like I was hoping that I would land on a selection with respect to this show that included, represented the diversity of materials that the artists were using. And it worked out that way. So I was happy about that. We had painting on paper, we had photography, we had sculptural work and mixed media. But in terms of how I look for and select art from my clients, it really is an organic process and very tailored to each client that I have. I typically start off with a initial home consultation where I see the client's space and try to learn as much as I can about what they're interested in and what motivates them and inspires them. I ask general questions, specific questions, and sometimes we'll show them examples of artwork at that initial meeting just to get a take on things. And because I've been doing this for quite some time, what typically happens is once I start understanding the client's taste, artists start popping into my mind that I know. And I just start formulating a portfolio for them. And sometimes it's artists and galleries that I know quite well that I'm pulling from. Other times I'm searching and finding new artists and galleries to include in the options for my clients. But I'm looking locally. I like to say that I look for the best of what I think the DC, Maryland, Virginia area has to offer. And I also look nationally and internationally because, as Emily noted in her introduction, so much in the art world happens online now. So there's really no limit to where I can be looking. And if my clients are open to looking at art that's not right down the street, we do that. And I'm always trying to find the best artwork I can within my client's budget. I hope that is responsive to your question.
Awesome. Thank you, Allison. I have a question now for Ronnie. Ronnie, what is your process when you're creating your work?
Okay, I think, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
My process is, it's unusual. If you think about a palette of paint that a painter might use, my palette is my paper. So my paper comes in different colors, different textures, different widths, different thicknesses. And so when I'm starting a piece, I usually have something in my mind that I'm going for, and then I'll look for the right paper. So that, let's say that door that was in the piece that was shown is papyrus paper, which is from Egypt, and it looks like wood in a way. And then I'll look for the papers that have the textures. And then as I apply the art, as I apply the paper, I'll sort of manipulate it so that it has even more texture. Does that, and I sort of layer it, one layer on top of another. Does that answer your question? More or less. Hopefully.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ronnie. Allison, we have another question for you from Kirsty. Were you surprised to find such a cluster of talent literally on your doorstep? Would you feel more inclined to promote local art over national art?
You're muted, Allison.
Sorry. As I said earlier, I mean, it felt like a gift to be able to do this and immerse myself in this exhibition and the entries. I knew a handful of the artists already, so I was familiar with some of the artists in the mix, but I certainly did learn about many others. And yeah, this is one of the ways that I beef up my resources, my database, so to speak. So that's always something I'm excited about, is to learn about new artists. So yeah, you know, like I said, I always try to include local artists in my client projects. But I have to say, for me, part of the enjoyment of being an art consultant is where the art search takes me. So I like the fact that I'm not limited geographically. That keeps it, you know, there's always something more to see, always new artists and artists to learn about from around the world. So I like to think of it as a combination of the two.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Allison. Kirsty, we have a question for you regarding how, if someone wanted to join Chart, how would they do so?
They would go to our website and fill out the form there. So it's Chevy Chase Artists, chevychaseart.org. Cracky, I don't actually know off the top of my head there. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And there's a membership form. We generally like to draw from Chevy Chase, Maryland, or DC, but we are open to people coming from different areas. So please come and join us. We would love to have you. I'll put the website address in the chat if anyone wants it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Kirsty.
And to see more of the artists in our group beyond just the one selected here, please join us in April for the pop-up show at PNC Bank parking lot. There'll be 18 artists there. Everything will be COVID friendly, socially distanced, masks. They'll be handing out masks if you forget one, and just a great opportunity to see the artists in this group. It ranges from 2D to 3D work, painters, photographers, sculptors, jewelers. So come stop by and see us in April.
I also wanted to add on the membership element that we have a fee that we ask people donate to our group, and also we love it when people volunteer to help out. So the whole thing is run by volunteers, everything that pretty much has happened today, and with most of our events. So if you want to be involved in a local community organisation, we are the ones for you.
Alrighty, I have another question. I apologize if I'm saying your name wrong. Mary Lee. We have a question about what inspired you for your piece.
Who was the question for?
It was for you.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Thank you. My process with that piece was thinking about layers of who we are and how different we all are. The particular technique I used, the technique I used is looks different. You don't get this from a one-dimensional or a two-dimensional photograph, but the colors are different when you're looking at it from different angles. And I feel like that's a reflection of who we are, in particular in this time when we're reflecting a lot on the differences between us and the similarities between us. So that's what my piece was inspired by.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Quinn, excuse me, we have a question for Kim. Where do you get your ideas from? Are you influenced by certain artists? Kim, are you on here with us? Can you hear me?
I think she left the meeting, so we'll just pass to the next question.
Yeah, definitely. So we have another just general question. Does
I'm
anyone?
here.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I couldn't find the mute.
it's okay. Zoom can be confusing, right?
Mhm.
So where do you get your ideas from? Are you influenced by certain artists?
I'm inspired by artists and art and nature, and what really gets me excited is using different materials that are not intended to be worked with together and using them in different ways. It's, I like discovering new things. And I have to say, I am so impressed with this show. There's so many really good pieces.
Yeah, they're all so beautiful, aren't they? It was so much fun putting this all together. Awesome. Thank you, Kim.
If I could just add something, this is Marilyn.
Yeah, what's up?
One of the things when we started Chart several years ago, we were really blown away by the level of talent in the neighborhood. None of us really had any idea that that there were so many artists in the neighborhood and there were so many accomplished artists in the neighborhood. So I don't know if the Chevy Chase, DC and Maryland neighborhoods are unique in this, or maybe, maybe this is true of all neighborhoods around DC, but it has been such an inspiration to me to know, and really a joy to be able to get to know these other wonderful artists. So just had to throw that in.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy how much talent there just is in such a small little area, right? So we do have another question. Does anyone in the area teach?
Yes. Many of the artists in this group are teachers, including me. I've taught everything from toddlers to teenagers and adults. If I have some private lessons I do out of my backyard and garage now due to COVID, but you can reach out to me via email or phone if you're interested in a lesson.
Emily, would you mind putting your email maybe in the chat box? So if somebody
Sure.
was interested.
I also teach some classes. This is Ronnie Jollis talking, in my paper art form, which is a really fun art form. And I have a group that's been continuing through the past few months, and then a new group starting next week of beginners. So if you go to my website, which is my name, I talk about that in the classes. Go down and I'll put it on the chat too, my email.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I used to teach at DC Public School and then Richmond program at Jenny Elementary School. And now probably this spring I'm going to start teaching again, but at my backyard or my studio, depending if I get vaccinated. And I teach mixed media. I love teaching art with recycling, of course, because I love recycling. And I used to teach also Spanish and art. So I teach Spanish to kids while we work with art. So it's a very creative way for them to work doing art and express themselves, plus learn new language.
That's amazing. I love to hear that. Oh, wow. So we did have a clarification question about how the slideshow and the recording will be posted. So they will be posted separately. So you will be able to see the recording with all these questions and the dialogue that will have the slides, but I will also post the slides separately so you can access those just by themselves if you're interested in it. And then if anyone teaches private lessons in the area and they're interested in just putting their contact information in the chat, that would be awesome. I think that'd be a really great way for everyone to keep connected. And we did have another question. Pam Gregory, this one's for you. Can you share your art background?
Yeah, I really have to thank my parents, because my parents really believed in having original art. And so we were really lucky. We had all sorts of art in our house growing up. And I've always been curious about it. And it was more, I took a couple of classes in college. I did a lot in high school, and I wanted to be an artist. And so I told my parents that I wanted to be an artist, and they said, you can't be an artist because look at Uncle Harry. My Uncle Harry was a full-time artist. He got his PhD, and he was successful as an artist. My parents said, look how hard Uncle Harry works, and no one is as good as Uncle Harry, so you won't be able to do it. So my first solo show was if I could just be like Uncle Harry, which was just kind of an attribution, you know, kind of just a recognition that everyone has artistic abilities. They may not know it, and it needs to come out. And I think that there's a lot of liberation with being an artist. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Thanks so much, Pam. I have a question for Mark Leatherman. And what's your technique when you're capturing light without the glare?
Hi. Well, I typically, for most of my landscape shots, I shoot brackets, meaning I would do a series of 3, 5, 7, sometimes even 9 exposures with different settings for each. And then in the computer, combine the 2 or more of those shots in such a way that the best parts of each are taken. And that allows me to use a shot in which, say, what otherwise would be glare is taken at a lower exposure so that it's not blown out, and then combine that with another shot where it is blown out, but other parts of the scene that might be too dark have enough exposure so that they are revealed. And it allows the photographer to expand what we call the dynamic range of the image. Did that answer it?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Mark.
Sure.
Julie, if you're still on with us, we have a question for you as well. How do you manipulate your materials?
Thank you very much for the question. The materials, I work with clay, and most of my pieces are hand built. And I'm not sure what else I could say other than that. It's hand built with slabs and just balls of clay.
Awesome. I love it. And we just have a general question for any artist who wants to answer. How are you influenced by each other?
Well, I'll jump in on that because it's sort of a softball question for me. This is Mark again. And I say that because Marilee is my wife. And so I have an in-house consultant to give me feedback as I'm working on things, and vice versa.
And I'll speak from my experience being a member of this group for 3 years, that we're often doing shows together or running into each other in the neighborhood, and just these sort of quick exchanges that we can talk about what we're working on or what we're struggling with, and maybe send an image or pop by a show, and just getting that feedback that's just honest and intuitive. I find extremely helpful, and I really enjoy getting to know more and more artists in this group and seeing their work evolve. It's really its own community of teaching and learning. So it's very special to be a part of this group. So if you're on this call and you're thinking of joining Chart, I encourage you to do so. Even if you're just an art appreciator and you want to attend more shows or critiques, or sometimes they're create outings to exhibits when we get back to that, but there's lots of different opportunities just to enjoy the arts. We're just coming up on 6 o'clock now, so if there are any last questions, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and put them in the chat.
It's Patricia Dugroff. I just like to thank Allison and everybody in the group for being so welcoming and kind. And I love working with you guys. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to launch a new show at the Spring Valley Capital Workspaces, which I curate for you guys, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you, both Emily's, for all the hard work tonight.
You're welcome. And thanks, Patricia. That's a great kind of spinoff, how one art group leads to another exhibit. We're all kind of working together and helping each other and moving on to other shows, and then coming together again when we do our chart shows. I think that this went really well. It was our first time. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. Apologies for the tech glitches, or if you didn't get into the Zoom, hopefully you got to see the recording. This is our first virtual show, and we'll definitely do one again, and keep the pop-up in your mind for April when the weather is warming up a little, and we're going to be outside at PNC Bank in the parking lot, 18 artists, 2D, 3D. So please join us. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. There's a list of all the artists on the website, so I encourage you to reach out to them if you want to purchase their work or see more of their work. All these artists have websites, and you can see all of the wonderful things they've created. Have a great evening, and thanks again for coming.
Thank you. It was great.
Yeah, thank you everyone that worked on this. It was great.